president of the New York City Correctional Officers Benevolent Association and have been the past 20 years. It's very disheartening when you hear the public advocate and others stand here and criticize the work of the men and women of the Department of Correction. When Joseph Pond first came to New York, I was not pleased with the assignment that was given to him by the mayor of the city of New York. However, I have not accepted that fact that he is receptive to change, to make the necessary changes that we can move forward in the Department of Corrections so that we are not criticized as much as others continue to criticize us. As a person that lives in the Bronx, I see the young men and women that are in jails. I talk to the 16 and 17-year-olds. And I have suggested on more than one occasion that you give these kids something to do. I do not think a child that's 16 or 17-year-old should be put in punitive segregation for smoking a cigarette. But the 17 or 18-year-old that punches out the eye of a correction officer needs to be put somewhere. The young man that takes a razor blade and gives another inmate 300 stitches needs to be put somewhere. He doesn't need a timeout. He doesn't need to be put back in population. So I support the commissioner and what he's trying to do. But what I do not support is the Board of Corrections, some members, not all, some members criticizing, and they have not walked in our shoes. They have not stood up to the fight. They have not went and talked to correction officers that face these dangers every day. And I understand the different groups, the Legal Aid Society, and all these different people. Take the inmates out of Rikers. Well, by a show of hands, what neighborhood do you want that jail built in, and do you feel like living next door to them? And I'm with that. You can move them wherever you want, but put them in your neighborhood. Stop putting them in the South Bronx. Stop putting them dead in Brooklyn somewhere among the communities in which they come. Do something for a change. Work with us to make this a better agency as opposed to continuously criticizing us. So Joe, if I've never said it 100 times, I've never said it once. I got your back, brother. We'll do what we got to do. And if those that don't want to participate, you can't help everybody. God is good. We're going to do what we got to do, so we'll go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Liz Vegas. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right, from the Jails Action Coalition. Mayes, I apologize.
I wrote it down. Today I'd like to speak about these new suggestions which seem, or directives, which I can point to a couple that particularly disturb me. Given that there are 7 areas in which the new directives submitted by the Department of Corrections should be considered punitive, we are hopeful that there will be a full opportunity for the public to be heard on these issues. For example, under policy, the new directives state that the Department of Corrections shall not use enhanced segregated housing as a punitive segregation unit. I submit that the ESH includes a striking number of punitive features. One of the most punitive directives concerns lockout time, which is described as a minimum of 7 hours of lockout time. The minimum differs sharply from the time outside required for the general population, which is 14 hours, according to Section 1-05 of the minimum standards. Also, the visiting restrictions, which demand no contact with visitors, is distressing. There is no such rule for the general population. Does not touching loved ones help in rehabilitating incarcerated individuals? I doubt it. This board, which oversees the Department of Corrections, is charged with assuring that the department conforms with the minimum standards created in 1978. It is essential
1 minute.
that advance notice, widely distributed, and a public hearing precede a vote on such significant changes. And I'm hopeful that this new way of approaching it will do just that. But I doubt it.
My name is Elena Landricina. I'm a staff attorney at Disability Rights New York, which is New York's designated protection and advocacy safety systems. We have federal and state authority to ensure the protection of people with disabilities who are in facilities, including jails and prisons. We're greatly concerned about the lack of transparency with the board's work, and we also have substantive concerns about the expansion of indefinite solitary confinement through the creation of the Enhanced Supervision Housing Unit, as well as the complete lack of any explanation about how mental health services are going to be provided in this unit. So with respect to the board's discussion today, we found out very late last night about the new proposed rule. We think it's fundamentally contrary to the principles of transparency and effective government oversight to post on the website and not distribute it through email that the board is considering a completely new agenda for today. With respect to the substantive concerns that we have, we're just as concerned as we were last Monday when we submitted comments to the Board of Correction about enhanced supervision housing. There's particular concern about the lack of any exclusion for people with mental illness or other disabilities, people who need supports and access to services, and even in the latest rendition of the proposal, there's no real discussion about how these services are going to be provided, how people, since we know over the last several years that people continue to die in isolation when they're denied access to services, how this can be omitted from any discussion, and the board will move forward on this is very concerning. So while we agree that reforms that are targeted to reducing violence at Rikers Island has to be a priority. It should be a priority.
1 minute.
Because of the significant population of individuals that we are concerned about, which are people with disabilities. They continue to be subject to abuse and neglect. These reforms that are targeted towards violence can't be at the expense of the health and safety of vulnerable individuals.
Thank you.
My name is Skylar Albertson. I'm here today representing the Bronx Defenders. I want to start out by echoing concerns voiced by Dr. Cohen about the total lack of meaningful programming and services in punitive segregation. For the vast majority of the clients of the Bronx Defenders, I've personally interviewed in solitary confinement units at Rikers and various facilities. There's been absolutely zero meaningful services. So at this point in time, there's really no reason to believe that anything would be different in ESH. I'd also like to address the notion that 90 days is currently the maximum amount of time someone can be placed in punitive segregation. That's merely the maximum amount of time you can get for one ticket. People are usually given more than one ticket. And so in 59 interviews conducted over a 12-month period from the summer of 2013 through this past August, the median amount of days that those 59 individuals were placed in punitive segregation consecutively was 90 days, not the max, the median. So the Bronx Defenders has submitted a list of concerns to the Board of Correction, which I trust the board members have read. I want to narrow my comments today to the total lack of due process afforded to individuals who are going to be placed in punitive segregation and potentially in the future being placed in ESH. The way that these hearings go, the department will tell you that there is an independent and impartial hearing officer, but that officer is a correction officer employed by the Department of Correction. There's no amount of specialized training that can overcome that inherent conflict of interest to have a correction officer as the sole person in the room with an incarcerated person for a hearing. There's the only two people in the room for those hearings generally, is an incarcerated person and a correction officer. There are rights to witnesses, rights to evidence, but these are routinely denied in large part because of the structure of these hearings. There's an appeals process that is very rarely explained to incarcerated people, and they very rarely are able to pursue it in time. There's then an Article 78 process, and that is so long and cumbersome that issues are often moot by the time they're entertained, and it's just largely an ineffective and slow process. So the specific point I'd like to press upon everyone here today is that for any placement of any individual in any type of restricted housing, there needs to be outside independent advocates representing incarcerated people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Luz Rivera, Department of Correction.
I just want to say one thing, and well, a few things. I work in the fire safety unit, and I respond to many fire alarms, fire cells. And in doing so, I see correction officer being insulted, throwing feces, urine, spit on, and I have not heard anybody here from Board of Correction address that issue. I know that we're here to be impartial, and I would like to ask the Board of Correction, the board, to please take that into consideration when coming together to resolve a problem, because we're here in it together. We have to be impartial to make sure that the program does work. Please take that into consideration. Work with us. We do a great job. We want to go home the same way we come to work. Okay. A lot of people are getting assaulted. Not only inmates. Inmates get assaulted by inmates also. But we get assaulted by inmates. We get spit on. We get kicked. We get cut. It hurt me so much to walk into an alarm and see an officer soaking wet with feces, urine, and yet that officer is standing there holding that post because he's a correction officer, because he's doing his job or her job. Yet, go home and come back the next day to do the same thing over and over again. So please, let's work together and be impartial. We have to do this together. We can't just view the inmate, view the officer that's doing the job as well. Please work with us. Thank you.
Thomas from Department of Correction.
Good morning all. I'm Officer Thomas. I'm a correction officer. I just wanted to say that January 7, 2014, I was assaulted by an inmate. I know when people hear, oh, you're a correction officer in New York City, that you signed up for that, and that's not what I signed up for. I also signed up for care, custody, and control, and I also signed up to assist with my fellow officers with rehabilitating these inmates. When I was assaulted, the inmate stated, I'm getting a little teary-eyed. He stated, go ahead, press charges. I'll just tell these mother effers that I hear voices and that I'm going to hang up, and I'll just walk out of here. Sure enough, he walked out. He didn't get no extra charges brought up on. And I say that to say that these inmates are fully aware that there is no consequences to their actions. And they are stating constantly that they're going to continue to abuse us. They're going to continue to use the city for their money because they know that the law is on their side. I'm not going to take up 2 minutes. Like I said, I'm getting a little teary-eyed. So I just want to say that correctional officers every day, they go into these jails and they are constantly being abused. And not all inmates are bad. I want to state that. Not all inmates are bad. Not all inmates come there with the intentions on hurting other officers, but there are inmates that come here and they're looking for what they say, quote unquote, a come up with New York City's money. So I just want, others to take a look at that and further investigate the situation instead of just saying, oh, this officer should have remained professional at all times. Because if an officer is being attacked and I'm just sitting in a chair and the inmate is coming at me, just grabbing me because he's mad at another inmate, I did not sign up for that. So with that being said, they are very aware that there is no consequences to their actions, and they will continue to attack the officers and mental health civilian staff as well. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Our next speaker is Shaira Daniels.
My name is Shaira Daniels, and I'm a correction officer for New York City. New York City Department of Corrections. On November 30th, 2013, I did not go home the same way I came into work. I was assaulted by an inmate who fractured my left orbital. The flyer that Elias gave out is my picture. This is me. I did not go home the same way I came to work. took a lot out of me. It's not what I signed up for, and I would like for stuff to be happening to the inmates.
Take me time. It's okay. Speak from your heart.
It just hurts because I suffer from migraines now. I lost vision in my left forefoot, and I'm only 23 years old, and it's just a lot.
But you go to work every day.
Exactly. Get up every morning, put the uniform on, and try and put it behind me, but I can't because I still work with you.
Keep going.
I would like for y'all to understand that it's not an easy job. Put on a uniform, you probably won't go home the same way.
It's good.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Department of Correction.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Angel Castro. I've worked in CPSU, which is often discussed in this room this morning. That you keep me and my co-workers in mind, that we do deserve a safe environment along with the inmates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. Our next speaker is Elias.
Not to take up much of your time, there's a couple of things I would like to point out that everybody in this room probably already know. According to the Department of Corrections, the last 5 years, fiscal years, there have been 317 stabbing and slashings. Those are not correctional officers involved with inmates. Those are the inmates stabbing and slashing each other. According to their statistics, 3,317 assaults on correctional officers in the last 5 years. 116 assaults against medical staff, 7 assaults on DOC civilian staff, 8 assaults on other civilian staff. The other thing that they pointed out that I would like for the board to really pay attention to, especially Dr. Cohen, is they've determined that only 15% of the inmates in our custody is responsible for the statistics that I just gave. 15% of the 12,000 inmates that we have is responsible for these statistics. The other thing that they pointed out is that 85% of the inmates who participate in stabbing and slashings are actually gang members. Now, the only thing that I'm saying to you is help us, protect all of us. This is not just about inmates. There are members of this board who never, ever, ever speak up for correctional officers. And when I read your charter, I'm confused because according to your charter, you're supposed to be responsible for me, for Officer Daniels, that got her ovary broken by an inmate, and all she did was open the door to lock him out. Some of you never, ever expressed any concern about us, and that's bad. Because those of us who break the rules, we get suspended, terminated, suspended without pay. Some of us are doing time. So when we do wrong, we pay. What we're asking you is, when these inmates that are committing the crimes do wrong, they should pay too. And they should not be able to hide behind the label of being mentally ill. They should not. The inmate that assaulted both these officers are mentally ill. Excuse me. That's the classification that they have. There's nothing mentally ill about them. So in the end, all we're asking for is a fair shot. And at the end of the day, like I said on the flyer, all we're saying is, Board of Correction, bottom line, protect all of us. Inmates, civilians, and correctional officers.
Thank you.
Good job.
And our last speaker is Terry Hubbard, Jail Action Coalition.
I'm here not only to speak about the inhumane conditions of our jails. That's not what I'm only here for. I'm here because I am the advocate of the thousands of young people and older people, all the inmates on Rikers Island with mental illness. sometimes the punishment does not fit the crime and the crime does not fit the punishment. I agree with Mr. Schwartzbaum on what needs to be taken and what needs to be done. The heinous conditions, the gang violence, especially in our houses of OBCC, where they have been ranked the hell house. I speak to many officers, former correction officers, as well as NYPD, on the heinous brutality that's now stage 4 cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, and let me tell you, when stage 4 cancer begins, there's no hope left. There's no sanctity in it. But I'm not only here to represent those with mental illness, but I want to let Commissioner Pott know that you are appreciated and you are needed, as well as Dr. Ventures, who is not here. I'm not only the liaison for the mentally ill on Rikers Island, I am a civilian and a parent of an inmate on Rikers. I am also the new appointed liaison of the Officers Against Brutality on Rikers Island. A lot of these men and women do not come to work to be brutalized and mentored and tormented. But there are the chosen few that are the cancer to the pure. And just like cancer, it must be cut out. It not only, we don't need radiation or we don't need a chemo. It just needs to be cut out blatantly. I was chosen to lead the correction officers of Rikers. I've been there for 8 years. They know me on a first name basis. I come across Rikers Island 6 o'clock in the morning. I eat breakfast with the officers. I even get there before the MTA. I'll get on Accessorite, I'm there before the roosters crow. I come to let you know that the officers have appointed me RNDC, AMKC, GMDC, GRVC, Rose and OBCC. These are the officers who have never been given a chance to speak. These are the officers that do not believe in brutality. These are the officers that have spent 10 and 12 years without being appointed.
1 minute.
I stand before you, Commissioner Pott, to please make time for us to say what needs to be done in Rikers Island, because you have the officers that have not created any infractions that want to help out with the inmates with mental illness. And I stand before you as their new appointed liaison.
Thank you. So that concludes our public forum, and I want to thank everyone for their attendance today. And the proposed rule will be in the city record, as we stated, any number of times. We would welcome written comments. In addition, there will be a public hearing. The board now is going into an executive session to discuss 2 recent in-custody deaths, legal issues, and a personal matter. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor, adjournment.